So, Chuck Schumer thought he could play a risky game with this shutdown threat, but it looks like the gamble just backfired on the Democrats. On today's show, here on USA Zone, we're breaking down the looming government shutdown, what it really means, and why Schumer's strategy may have collapsed at the last second. President Trump and congressional Republicans are focused on keeping the government open. They've notched big wins, passed the bill, and want to keep that momentum alive. No stalling, no setbacks. Meanwhile, Democrats are holding the country hostage with a laundry list of radical far-left demands. The truth is, they don't even care about half of these woke policies they're waving around. What they do care about is the money, because those funds eventually find their way back into campaign. That's the corruption playbook. Today, I'll be breaking down what this showdown means, why the Democrat strategy might have just blown up in their faces, and the next moves for the president and the Republican Party. Let's get started. Next.
Don't want to shut down the government, but if Democrats refuse to just pass this clean continuing resolution, that's exactly what's going to happen, and I think the Democrats are going to bear the responsibility for it.
As Vice President J.D. Vance putting the ball squarely in the Democrats' court as Congress faces a midnight deadline on Wednesday to fund the government or shut down. With the clock ticking, leaders from both parties, they're going to head to the White House for a meeting with President Trump later today, but they seem to be digging in their heels. Watch.
Meeting is a first step, but only a first step. We need a serious negotiation.
What the Democrats have done here is take the federal government as a hostage, and for that matter, by extension, the American people.
My colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle have behaved not as a separate and co-equal branch of government and a check and balance on an out-of-control executive branch.
There is nothing partisan about this continuing resolution. Nothing. We didn't add a single partisan priority or policy rider at all. We're operating completely in good faith to give more time.
Former Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy is here. You've been through many of these shutdown fights. I find them a little ridiculous, a little boring, and a little dumb. Frankly, if I'm being honest. And I just thought, surely this is not going to happen again, but here we are. Who has the upper hand here?
Well, the Republicans do, because you got to give credit to Speaker Johnson and the Republicans of the House. They passed a continuing resolution, which to your listeners mean it just keeps government as it's moving, because September 30th is the end of the year for government. The appropriation bills won't be done for later. There's nothing that will change, but it takes 60 votes in the Senate. This all comes down to Schumer, and the only reasons he's doing this is because he can't lead his own base. Remember when we came to this so many months ago, he said he was going to fight it, then he folded, and he had a new book come out, and he couldn't even go on a book tour because he's afraid of AOC. And remember, AOC is a member of Congress, but she raises more money than any other member of Congress. She's from New York. He's afraid she'll run against him. And so all he's doing is holding the entire country hostage because he cannot stand up and do the right thing. If I was President Trump, I would only say this inside the meeting. I will negotiate with you after you keep the government open, because they are the only ones who are determining this. They are holding it hostage, like Thune says, and they can have a lot of people laid off because he's afraid politically.
Former Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who, let's be honest, isn't exactly a superstar himself, actually had an interesting take on why Chuck Schumer is handling this shutdown the way he is. McCarthy says Schumer is scared of AOC, Alexandria Ocasio, and honestly, that's not too far-fetched. Think about it. For years, Schumer was basically a moderate. Then AOC came along, started raking in cash, built her brand, and quickly became one of the most popular figures in the Democratic Party. Now Schumer may be looking over his shoulder, worried she could challenge him and take his seat. So, at least publicly, Schumer is trying to act tough, stand up for the Democrats, and keep the progressive wing happy. But deep down, does he really believe a shutdown helps anyone? Doubtful, and that doesn't excuse his behavior. If Schumer had any backbone, he'd fight for what's best for the country instead of playing politics. Holding the government hostage and risking harm to millions of Americans who depend on these programs is not leadership. Schumer knows better. He's been around too long not to. But experience doesn't excuse cowardice.
Join me in a little trip down memory lane, which I think you will probably remember. This is from 2018.
We do not want to shut down the government because you can't get your way.
The last time you shut it down, you got killed.
Let me say something, Mr. President.
Let me say this. North Dakota.
This is the most unfortunate thing. We came in here in good faith, and we're entering into this kind of a discussion in the public view.
But it's not bad, Nancy.
No,
it's called transparency.
I know it's not transparency when we're not stipulating to a set of facts.
So I remember you remember that. The other thing that could happen is not only did the White House threaten to basically lay off a bunch of people if the government shuts down, because if they're not essential, then they're not essential. So I think that's a little leverage. But also, Kirsten Gillibrand, a Democrat from New York, is planning a Napa retreat in your home state of California. This is Political Playbook had this for the DSCC on October 13th and 14th. Why does that matter? Because they could be, the Senate Democrats, the Congressional Committee, could be at this fancy, wonderful wine retreat on a shutdown day, if that were to happen.
Exactly. They would have to cancel that. I mean, but this is all coming down to Schumer. Maybe he plans to open it up right before that so he can raise the money. This is purely a Schumer shutdown. Look, I've been on the other side of this. I remember in 2013, what happens when one party wins the White House for the second term, the party out of power, the base gets very upset. And you walk yourself into something that is not smart. It costs more money. You give the power to the executive branch. President Trump will be even stronger. Again, if I was President Trump, the only thing I would do in this situation is says, I will negotiate with you after you keep the government open, because nothing changes. It's at the end of the year when anything changes. This is simply Schumer. The Democrats are craving a new leader. When you look to Hakeem and Schumer, they are the weakest Democrats I've ever had in leadership. They don't know how to get out of this problem they created themselves in because they only look to themselves. They're not true leaders. And what you're watching is other Democrats rising up around them because they won't lead.
Chuck Schumer hasn't. He's shown real leadership in years, and neither has his House counterpart, Hakeem Jeffries, often mocked as Walmart Obama. Democrats keep recycling the same worn-out playbook: empty threats, loud condemnations, and dangling a government shutdown whenever they don't get their way. Trump has drawn a hard line. No negotiations unless the government stays open. That puts Democrats in a corner. They can either cav-risking outrage from their radical base or push for a shutdown and hand Republicans the optics victory. Schumer, worried about pressure from AOC and the progressive wing, may try to drag things out, but that only highlights weakness, not strength. For Republicans, the strategy is simple: stand firm, let Democrats bicker among themselves, and remind voters they're the ones protecting essential programs like WIC. And if history is any guide, Schumer will fold because Democrats can't afford to take the blame for wrecking the country just to score political.
We don't want to shut down the government, Martha, but it's really up to the Democrats. I think the American people really should pay attention to the fact that Democrats are threatening to shut down the entire government because they want to give hundreds of billions of dollars of health care benefits to illegal aliens. I've never seen anything like it. It's such a stark contrast between Republicans who are trying to put the interests of the American people first and Democrats who I think want to take money from the American people to give benefits to illegal aliens.
Voice J.D. Vance is exactly right. The Democrats are throwing the American people under the bus with their reckless shutdown threats. Schumer should be stepping up and leading his party down a better path. But let's be honest, he won't. Either he's not interested, or he's perfectly fine with this chaos. Between pressure from AOC and his obsession with blocking Trump, Schumer has backed himself into a corner. And now, he's starting to panic. Republicans, on the other hand, have made it clear they're willing to negotiate if Democrats simply keep the government open. But Schumer seems more interested in bluffing and blocking any progress. For a party that claims to care about the American people, Democrats are gambling with funding that millions depend on. At the end of the day, Trump's position couldn't be clearer. The government should stay open, and Democrats aren't getting their laundry list of radical demands. That's all for today from us here at American Zone. I'm Griffin, your host. Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.